Really nice that he's not in here right now. So we can talk about it.
All right, so this is KMS 10 at 10. I am Ashley Eining, Digital Specialist at Key Media Solutions.
I am Jess Peterson, also a Digital Specialist here at Key Media Solutions.
And I am talking about podcasts and Facebook TV today.
And I'm going to be talking about Facebook advertising and some Google site category exclusions.
And a reminder, we have our Digital Marketing Expo coming up in October. So that'll be October 10th on a Tuesday out in Rapid City at the Dahl Art Center. That's downtown in Rapid City. And that's called Concept One. If you want more information about that, details, who's speaking, price of tickets, Sam just threw that landing page up in the comments. So check that out. And we will go right into it. So our first topic was podcast. So I wanted to kind of throw this in here because we talk a lot about, digital marketing and a lot of the platforms that we typically use for our clients. But podcasting, I think, is a big thing in the digital realm as well. Do you listen to any podcasts?
Only a few.
Yeah.
Not as many as I know some other people in the office, like T listens to a lot. Mm-hmm. There's like a few that I follow, so I listen to those, but
What about
I listen
you,
to music more.
I love podcasts when I travel. When I'm in the car, I'll turn on a podcast. I really like the history podcasts.
Yeah.
Those are just they make the drive go super fast and easy. Yeah, I really like the history podcasts.
That's what I was going to say. I like to listen to podcasts when I road trip because it makes it go by so much faster.
Yeah,
and I listen to quite a bit of different types of podcasts. My favorite for a while there were like murder mystery ones, and those were super cool and interesting. I think that's more like when it gets closer to Halloween, I get into like that vibe. But anyway, so I wanted to talk about how listeners consume podcast content. And there was a recent survey done that really showed that podcasts maintain a pretty steady growth over time. And that they did a survey, and the people that were surveyed, 60% that were surveyed were familiar with podcasting. So 40% were not familiar with podcasting. And then 40% of the people that were surveyed said they listened to podcasts. So you're probably thinking, well, that's not quite a bit. But they said that probably averages out to about 168 million people listening to podcasts. But they're saying that this kind of content isn't growing in popularity or adoption as quickly as other types of content, like visual, like Pinterest or Instagram and that kind of content. But if we look at it, it is growing at the same pace as radio streamers, so like Pandora or Spotify. So equivalent to like that kind of streaming type of content, it's growing at the same rate. So it's still really important. And there was actually a study done by Bridge Ratings, and they projected that podcast ad spend is going to increase by 27% by the end of 2017. So that means it'll be about $250 million in ad spend in podcasts, where it was at $190 million in 2016. That's a pretty big increase. So people are still listening. People are still putting money towards ads. I notice quite a bit of the ads when I listen to podcasts because you're a little more engaged, I feel like. So if you're listening to radio or Spotify, you're listening, but it's more like in the background. Whereas for podcasts, I really try to make sure that I'm more engaged to listen to pull the information. So when those ads do come up, I notice them a little more. Yeah. Do you guys feel the same way?
Yeah, some of the podcasts I listen to, it's like the people talking will like promote the product. And so it just flows right in there. Yeah. Like, this is brought to you by, like, thanks for making it possible to do this one.
Yeah, and it's usually, like you said, like it's usually the podcast host that's doing the ad and kind of gives more of like a testimonial of what they think of the product. Yeah. So that's always really, really cool.
Like, you can still tell it's an ad, but it doesn't seem as, like, intrusive, like, where some ads on Spotify are, like, 10 times louder than your music, and you're, like, trying to, like, take your headphones out because you're sick of it.
Yeah, and usually, like, the ad is more related to the podcast content. Like, I listen to one gal who's more of an influencer, and she talks a lot about, like, subscription boxes, different subscription boxes that she gets. Like, she talked about Blue Apron one time and just kind of said how she tried it out and what her thoughts were. But it was still an ad. Yeah. So it was very cool of how that kind of meshes together. A few other stats before we move on to our next topic. They said 85% of listeners consume most or all episodes. So the ones that 40% that was surveyed that said they listened to podcasts, they're listening to the whole entire series, or at least the majority of it. Do you feel the same way? I feel like that's when I find a podcast I listen to multiple episodes.
Yeah. Well, I don't think you start a podcast with intention. That's so different. I think the mental aspect of a podcast versus like a social media article are two very different things.
Yeah.
You click onto a social media article with no intention of reaching the bottom, or if you do, scrolling. That's why like headers are so important in an article because catch people's attention. No, I think you push play on a podcast with the full intention of like catching that entire episode because you usually make time for it.
And then do you listen to, like, if you find one you like, you listen to other episodes within the series?
Yeah, absolutely. Because I look for series. I don't look for like a single podcast.
Yeah.
So I think the mentality is different.
And then another stat that this article had, that's the one I wanted. Sam's going to share this article where I got this information from because it has a lot more very interesting information. So I really encourage you guys to check that out. But another thing that they stated was half of the non-listeners don't even know how to find or listen to podcasts, which I found really interesting. Yeah, I kind of was like, I think before when I didn't listen to podcasts, maybe I would have been more naive to be like, oh, I wonder where I find that content. But literally, if you're an iPhone user, you have the podcast app, or you can get it from the iTunes store. So you already have that app. It's one that already comes on the phone.
This is news to me.
You're one that can't find that information.
Yeah, I usually just found some like through other things and just listen in a web browser, like through
do it that way too.
SoundCloud is usually how I would listen to them, just directly on. Most of them have their own website where they're posted.
Yeah. When the only thing that when you're doing it through your phone through the app, it takes up quite a bit of space. But we're going to move on to the next topic because Sam just gave us some hand gestures, so
moving
not inappropriate.
Well, this topic will go quick. So Facebook is now cracking down on what they call a cloaking scheme. This is mainly for advertisers that try to deceive Facebook's review team by Facebook has certain things you can't advertise, such as fireworks, guns. But some people have been recently getting around this by setting up like a cloaking link. So when the post is reviewed, it goes to one site. But then once it gets approved, it's like somehow reverts, and they don't go in and change it. They like code it so that on mobile it goes to a different site. And so when it gets approved, it then sends users to like a totally different site. And so Facebook is now introducing a lot of new AI and doing more manual reviews to try to crack down on this. And this is just another one of the things they're really trying to get low quality links out of users' news feeds. So even, this isn't going to affect the majority of advertisers. It's not something we do, but it just is showing that Facebook really is starting to put a higher value on the quality of content they want seen. And so if you're not already like thinking about what you're posting, or if you're sharing, the clickbaity type articles, you may want to start rethinking your strategy even quicker, because Facebook has been constantly rolling out new updates to really block that sort of thing from people's feeds.
Interesting.
So yeah, I thought it was interesting. I had never heard of cloaking, but it makes sense. And I always wonder how some things get passed on your news feed. Like, because you'll click on something and be like, how'd this ad get approved? But the nice one I wrote yesterday didn't. So yeah, it's nice to know that they're really trying to invest in the technology to keep content user-centered. Yeah,
very true. All right, so then on to our third topic, Facebook TV. So Facebook rolled out this new platform August 9th, so 2 days ago, on Wednesday, called Watch. And it's just been rolled out to a small group of people in the U.S., and I think it's going to eventually expand. But it's supposed to be a platform for shows on Facebook, so like episodes that are either live or recorded in advance. And it's going to help with, so like 10 and 10. So it's meant for like consistent themed shows, so like say like a weekly cooking show, or a weekly 10 and 10, or a daily vlog, or they said, videos with reoccurring characters. So you kind of have a series and they're put together. And that's going to be, like I said, available to a limited group at the moment. But where it's going to show up is specifically on your mobile app. It's going to be, if you see like the bottom toolbar, where it usually shows like the video icon, like that has like the little play icon, you press it, you see all your videos. Well, now it's going to be in there, and it's actually going to be more curated and organized to be kind of like Netflix, where it has more of like what you should watch or recommended for you or what's popular. So it's going to be organized in that way. And it's meant, so Facebook said their goal is for this platform to be a platform for all creators and publishers to find an audience, build that community, and have passionate fans, and eventually earn money for their work. So how they're going to charge, we'll see. They didn't really elaborate on that, but I think maybe there'll be material that's free and material that you might have to pay for. That's just my thought process.
I'm going to become a millionaire for hosting the 10 at 10.
You mean
Maybe.
media.
We're going to start charging.
Do you think, would you ever watch Facebook videos on your TV?
I don't know. Okay, so, they're trying to, I think Facebook's trying to branch out into the other, industries. So they had the marketplace that was kind of like Craigslist. And when that first came out, everybody's like, oh, it's going to take away from Craigslist. I've never used Marketplace. Have you guys?
No.
Just recently. But, I kind of thought the same thing about YouTube. Like YouTube, I'd look videos, and now I follow YouTube channels.
Yeah.
So, if this becomes a very similar way of YouTube, I can see myself finding a couple of, creators or publishers that I follow.
Yeah.
I just
think this is like, every time something like this rolls out, everybody's like, oh, it's going to take away from this platform. But as we have that conversation almost weekly where we say, it's going to break out the audience to the platform that they use the most.
Yeah.
People are still going to go to YouTube. Just
Netflix
as
is not going
Snapchat, they were like, oh, it's going to kill Snapchat. Where it's like, no, Instagram, stories and Snapchat stories. So, it just breaks it out to the specific
and
audience.
people use both.
Yeah.
They do.
So I think it's going to be interesting how they organize it. Like I said, I think what's really going to be probably the most interesting feature is when they're going to start charging people so that publisher gets paid. How that's going to work. So. Yeah. So
it'll be interesting to see when they roll that out.
Yeah.
So my last topic, just a short one again. Google has recently added some new site category exclusions. So these are the areas you can select when setting up a campaign. So some of the ones they have are like adult content, those sort of things, firearms, and so they're adding some new ones and taking some away to try to just make it a little more user-friendly and to allow your brand to have a little more say of where their ads are going to show. And this stems from this past spring. Advertisers started pulling their ads from YouTube after they saw that they were running on some very extreme content that didn't go along with their brand morals. Yeah. So one of the categories they're adding is sensitive social issues. This is going to include everything from discrimination, scandals, reproductive rights, and stuff of the like. So there's a ton of different things within that, but you can kind of get the gist. It's going to be more of those kind of politically charged issues that brands may have one way or another, and they can say, we don't want to be shown on sites that talk about this sort of thing. We want to, remain more neutral in the sense. Yeah, they're also going to be adding a category that's content suitable for families. So essentially, if you have something that's more PG-13 or advertising something like that, you can just exclude that entire category, and that's going to pretty much exclude the age ranges or the demographics that don't want to see that sort of thing. And then they are going to be removing the gambling and air pages site categories just because they pretty much already block those. Yeah. And so instead of having people select them, your ads aren't going to show on those anyway because Google doesn't show ads on those pages. And then they're also going to be removing the forum, social network, photo, and video sharing options, and they recommend people just put content labels on their ads. So if you have an ad that is going to be geared more towards a mature audience, instead of saying don't show this on social media, you can just say content for mature audiences, and it will automatically not show on some of those platforms. So just a good way for people to be thinking of where you want your ad to see,
yeah.
what kind of audience you're trying to really gear towards, and Google's trying to give some more areas where you can have a say in that.
Yeah, and I think there was always workarounds to get to that, but now like Google has really like made it a point to make it easier for the marketer or for the business in order to push the ad and like help organize it better, to show where you want to show. So cool.
I thought it was kind of cool.
Awesome. Well, that's all we had for you today. Again, we talked about Facebook, podcast, and that Google site category exclusion. So a lot of great information. If you want to check out this episode again, or if you want to see any of our past episodes, check out our YouTube channel, The Key Media Solutions. Cool.
Check it out.
Till next week.